Welcome to my channel. Subscribe, listen, and enjoy my stories every day. The moment I stepped through the door, a sense of unease pricked at my skin. My sanctuary, the gaming room, hummed with the familiar startup tune of my favorite console, Racing 3. I hadn't left it on. My heart rate ticked up a notch as I dropped my keys and coat, heading straight for the room. Inside, the screen blazed with the rapid motion of cars whizzing past at breakneck speeds. My account was logged in, which was impossible because I hadn't shared my password with anyone. Not even Laura, my wife, who had zero interest in video games. My leaderboard ranking was slipping by the second, and a chunk of my hard-earned virtual currency was missing. What the? The controller clattered to the floor as I approached, startling the figure ensconced in my gaming chair. Laura's younger cousin, Rick, spun around, his face flushed with guilt. Hey, I was just using my account. I cut him off, my voice sharper than I intended. He stammered, fidgeting with the controller. Laura said it was cool. She told me you wouldn't mind. That didn't sound like Laura at all. My gaze hardened as I processed the lie. And where is Laura now? Shopping, I think. She left a while ago, Rick mumbled, avoiding my eyes. I ordered him out, my mind racing as I locked the door behind him. The betrayal stung deeper than the lost rank. I grabbed my phone and dialed Laura, my fingers trembling with a mix of anger and disbelief. The call went straight to voicemail. Seething, I decided to wait for her return, pacing like a caged animal in our living room. When Laura finally walked through the door, her smile faltered at the sight of my grim expression. Is everything okay? She asked, setting down her shopping bags. I confronted her straight away. Why was Rick playing on my account? Her face paled. He just wanted to try it. I didn't think it was a big deal. But why didn't you ask me? And why lie about where you were today? Rick said you were out shopping. Laura's hesitation was all the confirmation I needed. I went to meet a friend first, she confessed. The lies unraveled as I pressed her, each admission more painful than the last. Laura had been seeing someone, a fact Rick inadvertently exposed while trying to cover for his own misuse of my gaming setup. I spent the night in the guest room, my mind a whirlwind of betrayal and heartache. Laura's deception was more than an affair, it was a violation of our life together. As I lay there, unable to sleep, a cold resolution formed in my mind. I would confront her tomorrow. No dramatic outbursts, just a simple, devastating assertion. I would end this marriage on my terms, ensuring Laura understood the gravity of her betrayal. Revenge would be mine, but it would be served cold and calculated. This was just the opening move in a much larger game. Morning light filtered through the blinds, casting long shadows across the room where I had spent a restless night. The house was eerily silent, as if it too held its breath, awaiting the storm that was about to unfold. After a sleepless night plotting and rethinking every detail of our marriage, my resolve had only hardened. Today, I would confront Laura with everything. There was no going back now. I found her in the kitchen, nursing a cup of coffee, her demeanor nervous, her eyes cautious. She must have sensed the shift in the atmosphere as surely as one feels the change before a thunderstorm. Good morning, she said tentatively, her voice barely above a whisper. I didn't return her greeting. Instead, I leaned against the doorway, arms folded, my expression unreadable. We need to talk, Laura. She nodded, setting her coffee down with a clink that seemed too loud in the tense silence. I know. I owe you an explanation. It's more than that, I replied sharply. I want the truth, all of it. Who is he? For a moment, she hesitated, then her shoulders slumped, defeated. His name is Mark. He's someone I met at the gym a few months ago. And you thought it would be okay to bring him into our home? To let his nephew play on my console as if he belongs here? Laura flinched at the accusation. It wasn't like that. It started as just talking. You were always busy, and I felt lonely. That's not an excuse, I snapped, my voice rising in anger. The betrayal stung anew, each word she spoke twisting the knife deeper. I know, she whispered, tears welling up in her eyes. I'm sorry. I never meant for any of this to happen. Sorry doesn't fix this, Laura. It doesn't erase the lies or the cheating. The air between us crackled with tension as she wiped her eyes, struggling to compose herself. What are you going to do? I want a divorce, I stated flatly, the words tasting bitter on my tongue. And I want you out of this house. Her face crumpled, the finality of my words hitting her like a physical blow. Please, can we talk about this? Maybe see a counselor. There's nothing left to discuss, I countered coldly. You made your choice, and now I'm making mine. As Laura absorbed the gravity of the situation, I turned to leave, but not before adding, and I'll be changing the locks today. You'll get your things under supervision. With that, I left her standing there, a figure overwhelmed by the wreckage of her own making. The house seemed smaller somehow as I headed to the bedroom to pack her belongings. Each item I tossed into the box, a photo, a book, a trinket, felt like stripping away layers of a life I thought we had built together. I had started the day determined to end things swiftly, but with each passing moment, my heart grew heavier with the weight of what was lost. Yet, there was no turning back. The die was cast, and the game had changed. Now, it was all about planning my next move in this chess game of betrayal and revenge. The day Laura moved out was overcast, the sky a mirror to the turmoil inside me. As she packed the last of her belongings into her car, an icy silence settled between us. The finality of our parting was punctuated not by tearful goodbyes but by the stern face of the attorney I had hired, who handed her the divorce papers. Please, she had whispered, her voice cracking, reaching out for any semblance of compassion. Can't we even try to? There's nothing to try for, Laura, I interrupted, my voice firm, devoid of the warmth she once knew. You should leave now. As her car disappeared down the driveway, a hollow feeling settled in my chest, but I pushed it aside. This was just the beginning of her consequences. I had plans to ensure the betrayal she levied against me was returned tenfold. The following weeks were a blur of activity. I threw myself into my work and my personal revenge project with equal fervor. I started by securing our joint assets. The bank accounts, the investments, even the frequent flyer miles we had saved for a vacation that would never happen, all were now under my sole control. But that was just logistics. The real plan needed something more personal, more devastating. I knew that Laura had been hoping to start her own business, a boutique store that she had dreamed of for years. Using a discreet, third-party contact, I began to intervene. Every location she considered leasing suddenly had a new, higher bidder. Suppliers she reached out to were mysteriously advised to steer clear of her. One evening, as I sat in the dim light of my home office, poring over emails and documents, my phone buzzed. It was Rick, Laura's cousin, the unwitting catalyst of this whole debacle. His tone was frantic, his plea urgent. Hey, man, I know things are bad between you two, but Laura's struggling. She's a mess, man. Can't you just talk to her? His words could have brought a wave of sympathy from someone who hadn't been betrayed as I had been. Instead, they fueled my resolve. Rick, she made her choices, I replied, my tone icy. She's no longer my concern. But she's losing everything, man. Isn't that enough? It's never enough, I said before ending the call. Each step of the plan solidified my path forward, driving away any lingering doubts. I had transformed from the man who loved too freely to one who controlled the board from the shadows. As the pieces fell into place, I sat back and watched as Laura's world crumbled. Not content with merely watching her struggle, I decided it was time to reveal the extent of my machinations. I wanted her to know it was me, that her actions had consequences that came directly from the one she betrayed. I sent her a message, one that would meet her as she faced yet another rejection or failure. Every action has an equal and opposite reaction. Newton. The message was cryptic enough not to incriminate me but personal enough for her to know exactly who it was from and why. As I sent it, a sense of dark satisfaction washed over me. This was retribution, crafted carefully and executed coldly. I leaned back in my chair, the glow from the screen casting shadows across the room. The game was indeed far from over, but I was now holding all the cards. The cafe was bustling, a cacophony of chatter and clinking cups, but my focus was laser-sharp as I watched from across the street, waiting. Today was the day everything would come to a head, the day Laura would learn just how deep my retribution went. I had arranged for her to meet a potential investor at the cafe, an investor that didn't exist. It was the cruel climax of my weeks of sabotage, the final act in my orchestrated downfall of everything she had hoped to build. As I watched her enter the cafe, her steps hesitant, I could see the strain of the past weeks etched into her face. Minutes ticked by until the appointed meeting time lapsed, and confusion turned to frustration, then despair, as it became apparent that no one would be meeting her. That's when I decided to make my entrance. Pushing through the door, I found her seated alone, a picture of dejection. Our eyes met, and the flicker of hope that danced in hers was extinguished the moment she recognized the coldness in mine. "You?" she gasped, her voice a mixture of surprise and fear. "Yes, me," I said calmly, taking the seat opposite her. "There's no investor, Laura. It was all me." Her confusion deepened. "What are you talking about?" "Every failed lease, every supplier who turned you away, every fake investor, it was all me. I made sure you wouldn't succeed." The cafe seemed to fall silent around us, our conversation the eye of a storm. "Why? Why would you do this to me?" Her voice broke, anger mingling with her anguish. "Because you betrayed me," I replied simply, my voice devoid of emotion. "And betrayal, Laura, demands retribution." She shook her head, tears streaming down her face. "I made a mistake. I was wrong, but this is cruelty. This is monstrous." "Yes," I agreed, the single word heavy between us. "Monstrous. Just like what you did." Standing, I left her there, a broken figure in a sea of cafe patrons, my heart pounding with a toxic mix of satisfaction and bitterness. As the days turned into weeks, I monitored her indirectly, ensuring my revenge was complete. Laura moved away, her dreams shattered, her spirit broken. But the victory was Pyrrhic. The satisfaction I'd expected from my revenge was overshadowed by a hollow emptiness. One evening, as I sat alone in the quiet of my now too large and too quiet house, a knock came at the door. I opened it to find Rick standing there, not with anger, but with a grim sort of understanding. "I know what you did," he said without preamble. "Not just the divorce, everything." I met his gaze, finding no reason to deny it. "Yes." He looked past me into the empty house. "Was it worth it? You destroyed her, but what did you gain?" "Peace," I lied, the word tasting like ash. Rick shook his head, sadness etching his features. "You think this is peace? Look around, man. You're just as broken as she is now. Maybe more." With those words, he turned and left, leaving me to the silence of my house, a house that once rang with laughter, now just a mausoleum of my own making. In the end, my revenge had come full circle, leaving me to ponder the ultimate price of betrayal and vengeance. Alone in my victory, I realized the cost of hatred was everything I had loved, and the only thing I had left was the echo of my actions.